Hey guys, Brennan here, and in this video I want to talk about the Tesla Semi event with the bonus, oh by the way, we're making a new Roadster topic, which everybody is talking about right now. First, a little recap about the night, the event. It was super cool. It was held at SpaceX, actually at the airport right next to SpaceX, in a hangar. So usually at the Tesla events, like they have kind of drinks and hors d'oeuvres and stuff outside first for like an hour and a half as people come and get their parking all situated, which for me, I was staying in a hotel about 4 or 5 miles away, and so I Ubered over and I got dropped off at the right location and stuff, but SpaceX is pretty big and there's multiple buildings, so I ended up going down like the wrong channels, like walking through the middle of SpaceX with these, warehouses and people working there, which is kind of surprising. It was still late. But I knew where the design studio was, which is not where this event was. And I knew where the superchargers were. I thought it was going to be located over there. What was located over there, unbeknownst to me, was the VIP entrance. So I made my way over there thinking that's where the entrance was. And I went up to one of the security guys, clearly one of the event, event security or whatever you call them, and I was going to show them, hey, here's my pass. But then, like, everybody around was like, oh, we gotta make room, clear the driveway here, or whatever. So they pulled me aside. They're like, sorry, buddy, we gotta pull over to the side here. So I did, and then in drives this black Model S. Turns out it was Elon and company. Yeah, I could have just gone home then. I was like, oh, I saw Elon, cool. Didn't get to shake his hand. I probably could have if I had done one thing later on, but anyway, so I finally made it to where everybody was and hanging out. Got to meet a bunch of people. Hung out with Dan from What's Inside, a really cool guy. Chris from K-Man Auto was there as well, said hi to him. Also met Ben Sullins, who was there as well. Let's see, Brooks from Drag Time, Derek. I think those were, I was trying to find, this was all in the beginning, I was trying to find Bjorn and I could not find him, although I knew he was going to be there. And then a couple people that knew who I was. Shout out to Troy, who was a VP of UX, did some consulting work. Apparently he's seen my videos. Also Lee and his wife from out here in Michigan. So cool to meet you guys. Yeah, so we all piled into the event. I didn't know where the entrance was. Some other people figured it out, so they lined up, right where that was. And they were able to be at the front of the podium, which at least was graduated a little bit, so you could see kind of. But I was hoping I would be a little bit closer. But anyway, it was still cool. I saw all the executives that I wanted to see. JB Straubel was there, of course. Elon Musk. Franz, actually got to shake his hand. JB I did a shout out to, which was a little awkward, but whatever. Also, Jon Favreau was there, well-known Hollywood director and actor, associated with the Iron Man movies and Chef and a bunch of other stuff. So anyway, meeting people and stuff was really fun. Oh, I also got to talk with Jerome a little bit, who's the head of the Tesla Semi stuff. So the Semi itself. So we all kind of knew what it was going to look like, so that wasn't too much of a surprise. But seeing it all together hooked up to a giant trailer was definitely the true experience. It was a surprise to see the smaller one. I'm not sure what the role of that one is. I don't know about trailer sizes. I know there's smaller trailers, but I didn't think they were smaller in all dimensions. But I guess there's some utility there. So the specs for this thing, of course, everybody's going, well, first the structure of it. So the driver is now in the center instead of on the left, like passenger cars. Pretty crazy view in there. It's definitely like a cockpit. It's probably, as Tesla vehicles are kind of getting more and more towards an aviation experience than regular driving. So I think that's cool. It's definitely different. And then it's got the two LCD panels in front. Driver's still pretty high, like normal in a semi. And then so the drivetrain is four Model 3 engines, one for each of the rear wheels. And then the two front wheels are independent in suspension, which are the steering tires. And then they didn't say how big the batteries are, but if you look in one of the diagrams, it looked like it had at least four separate cells. Not that it's going to be like four Model S packs or anything like that. But they did say it was going to have a range at freeway speed under max load of 500 miles using less than 2 kilowatt hours per mile. So if it used 2 kilowatt hours per mile, that would be 1,000 kilowatt hour battery. So just under will probably be around 800. That's about twice what I thought it was going to be. But there's also a 300 mile variant, which is probably a 400 or 500 kilowatt hour battery. So yeah, they totally knocked it out of the park in terms of range. And they're also, this isn't like the EPA rating where it's a mix of like city and freeway. I mean, they're claiming this is full on, completely weighted down freeway speed semi. So it's not like, just the truck itself without a trailer. And so a number of things that they work into the design in order to achieve that. One is the coefficient of drag, which is 0.36, which they made a big deal of being even less than the Bugatti Veyron, I think, which is 0.38, which is crazy impressive. I mean, the semi looks like a bullet train, so it's not too surprising that it's increased. And just for reference, like a normal diesel semi could be, they're not very aerodynamic. I mean, it could be up to 0.7 or something like that. So it may be surprising that the Bugatti has such a high coefficient of drag, but supercars like that are designed not necessarily for max efficiency, but to be able to get to high speeds. And when you get to a certain, when you get to speeds that are so high, there's so much air going by the car that there's the possibility that the airflow could actually lift the car off the ground. And so sometimes they actually make sure that the drag is high enough so that to prevent the car from actually lifting off the ground. That's essentially what a spoiler does, or a wing, I think they're called. So anyway, the comparison is fair. It's crazy that a semi has such a low coefficient of drag, but it's a little bit misleading in that it's not necessarily unintentional. It wasn't like the Bugatti team was like, man, how I wish we could make it more streamlined or something, but we just haven't figured out how. And you also notice that the powered wheels, the motored wheels are covered. And that reduces drag as well. Also, the trailer has drop flaps that reduces drag as well. And then the cabin, the flaps on the cabin go all the way back to like within a few inches of the trailer, which really helps that wind flow instead of creating turbulence there. It looks like it doesn't even have enough travel there to turn well enough, but I think those flaps actually move, and they can kind of, if the semi's going this way, they can kind of curve inward to make more space. At least I think that's the case. But anyway, it turns fine. And then in terms of differences between electric driving and diesel semi-truck driving, so the acceleration is crazy. Unloaded, it can accelerate in 5 seconds, which is actually faster than my Model S, which is a 70D all-wheel drive. And then under load, it can do it in 20 seconds. And comparing that to diesel, an unloaded diesel apparently can do it in 15 seconds. And part of that is how fast you can shift. Under load, it takes like a minute, like 60 seconds for it to get up. So that's actually significant because I was learning some of this stuff because the guest that I brought was my brother-in-law. He used to drive truck for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years or something like that a while back. So he's familiar with diesel trucks. And one of the things that he was saying is that that's important in city driving, where you're, stop and go, because when you're under load, you have to, the lower gears are actually split into half. So it's like one gear, I don't remember what it's called. It's like half one and then 1.5 and then 2, because you're basically crawling when you start, because under load it's just so heavy, and there's so much inertia that you need to counteract that. But with an electrical motor, you have max torque at the bottom, and so you just go. And then also going uphill, and this is also especially significant in higher altitudes where the combustion, there's less oxygen to be involved in the combustion chemical reaction. So there's less power. I don't know the correct physical term, but anyway, gas vehicles have more trouble at higher altitudes, just like people do. And but electric motor has no problem. So these things under load can travel 65 miles per hour under full weight at a 5% grade, and as opposed to a diesel, which can really maintain that only at 45 miles per hour. So that's pretty cool. And that actually seems like, well, whoopee-doo, maybe it's not even safe to do that. But the thing is, in the transport business, time is money. Let's say you're going over the Rockies, and let's say you have to do like a minimum speed. And if you've ever driven up highways, Interstate 70 or 80, I think goes through there too, through the Rockies. If you ever, you don't want to get behind a semi because they'll be going like 15 miles per hour or something up the really steep parts because their engines have to work so hard. So they lose time. And they can't go that fast on the descent either and make up the time, because otherwise they'd end up in the runaway ditches. Not only that, but on the descent, they're burning through their brakes and they're wasting fuel because they have to keep their engines on, but they're going downhill. So an electric drivetrain and system is able to really maximize that situation, because you're able to not rely on oxidative processes in thin air where there's less oxygen. So you can maintain your speed and not lose time. And then on the way down, you can save wear and tear on your brakes, which is money, and also reclaim energy as you go down. So mountainous travel is going to be a completely whole different ball game with the electric drivetrain. So that's really cool. And I was actually asking Jerome, so is this going to will this be able to maintain its speed without using brakes on a full load? And he was like, yeah. And there's nothing, he said they made they had to do a few small tweaks to the Model 3 motor, but it's essentially the 4 Model 3 motors. So however much regen each one of those, or one motor can get on a Model 3, now you have 4 of those charging your batteries. So pretty interesting. Then of course there's the Mega Charger system, which is an awesome name and sounds very, Transformers or something. So that's obviously, none of those exist, but they will probably, a lot of them will be at destinations where the truck will be loading or unloading, because the truck has to be stationary while it's loading or unloading. And so that's the best time to charge. But even without that, by law, you're required to take breaks at a certain period of time. I think 30-minute break. And so if you're charging for 30 minutes with such a huge battery, is going to go quite far. So with Mega Charger capability, and they didn't say what the max power is, but by definition of what mega means, it's probably going to be something like 1,000 kilowatts, which makes sense. I mean, even if you had, let's say you had a 500 kilowatt hour battery, which is probably bigger than that, but that would be 5 100 batteries. And if each of those 5 is receiving, you know, even 300 kilowatt power, you know, it's 5 at once. So, I mean, you're just receiving an insane amount of power all at once. Okay, now let's talk about safety of the vehicle. So, of course, structurally, it's gonna, I'm sure they're designing it to be super safe. The driver is actually at a new point of safety because of his or her central location in the cabin, which gives you more of a buffer zone on each side. And then it's going to have autopilot hardware, and they said Musk said it's going to be capable of enhanced autopilot capabilities, and he specifically mentioned auto emergency braking, lane control, auto steer, and he also mentioned that it's going to have anti-jackknifing capabilities, which you know, that's pretty cool. But it's you know, collisions with semi trucks are pretty bad, at least for on the receiving end of whatever it's hitting. So it's really great to have the automated systems, safety systems on something as big as a semi. So I think that's really cool. And he also said that these will have the ability to do convoying, or I guess that's kind of similar as platooning, different word. But so like 3 trucks could kind of stagger pretty close together, kind of like a train. Well, it's a convoy. And what that does is that decreases wind resistance because behind a truck there's an area of, not a vacuum, but well, it's kind of a vacuum, less air density. So if you can get in that spot and drift in it, then you can, it's more efficient driving. It's more like driving in space. So if you can, you know, line up a couple vehicles to do that, you can really save on energy costs. And he said the semis, like, they'll be able to do that now. It's not like a future thing. He did not mention fully autonomous stuff, but I'm sure that that's where they're going. And when that is when that is in place, I think that will bring cost savings to another level, because you take the human employee out of the equation. So the truck can now drive and charge 24 hours a day. Anytime it's not charging or being loaded, it can be on the road. It doesn't need to take any breaks. And, you know, there are human teams that can do that, but it requires 2 humans, one to rest and one to actually drive. So a computer doesn't require that. So that will just take it to a whole new level of savings compared to, you know, diesel or whatever. Of course, you can automate diesel systems too, and people are trying to do that, but electric is, I think, gonna, by the time that actually gets happening, just electric drivetrains, I think, will just be much more commonplace, so it won't even be an issue. So Tesla gave some numbers as to what savings they can expect using a 100-mile trip, which is 50 miles out, 50 miles back. It was an A to B to A scenario, at least that's how I understood it. At 80,000 pounds, driving 60 miles an hour, if you pit a diesel truck, cost of a diesel truck to cost of a Tesla semi, the Tesla semi is, it was like 20 or 30% lower, something like that. And then if you enable convoying, it would be almost 50% less than a single diesel truck. That's good. I mean, it really depends how you do the numbers, and you know, there's all kinds of other factors in there, such as a lot of semis drive through snow, and electric drivetrains just suck up energy when they're driving through snow, so maybe the savings aren't quite as good. But the thing is, it's still cheaper. I mean, it would be good even if it was just a little bit cheaper, but the way they're calculating it, it's significantly cheaper. So of course, we'll see how that plays out in real life. There's a number of companies that reserve a handful to up to 15. I think Walmart reserved 15 semis. I know a local stain here called Meyer reserved 4. I know because I overheard the executive at the event, and I'm sure they'll test them out, see how it works, and make their decisions based on that. So before I get into the impact of those kind of things, I just want to mention the Roadster 2, which everybody is talking about. I mean, the Roadster 2 also. The next gen Roadster. So Musk's goal, he said, was just to give a hardcore smackdown to all comparisons to a gasoline car. And this Roadster is like a rocket. It's crazy. 1.9 second 0 to 60, I think 4.2 0 to 100 miles per hour, and then 8.8 seconds quarter mile, which just is faster than any other production car, hands down, in all of those categories. Of course, track performance, we'll see how well it keeps itself cool. That'll be a big integral part of it. But basically, this is a supercar that's 250 grand that is performing at the multi-million-dollar level. So it's pretty much over for those vehicles in terms of performance. So what's the significance of all this? So really what Tesla did at this event is they came out with two different motor vehicle segments, semi-trailer transportation and supercar, and they demonstrated that electric drivetrains, and specifically their vehicles, are superior. So we've already seen that in the luxury sedan market and the luxury SUV market. We're probably going to see that soon with the Model 3 in the, can't really call it exactly economy range because it's not there yet. It's not cheap enough. But in the entry-level luxury market, it's going to redefine that as well. So what's the impact of that? I think, as a proof of concept, which is kind of what Tesla has done historically. I mean, I forgot about the original Roadster. The original Roadster dispelled the notions that electric vehicles are boring, can't be sporty, can't be powerful, can't be fast, and can't be long range. So, every one of their new vehicles is basically a proof of concept that everybody signs on to. So it's no different with the Tesla Semi and with the next gen Roadster. They're basically taking two additional segments and saying it's over. So, but that's not the big issue right now in 2017 for Tesla as a company. As a company, their big issue right now is getting the Model 3 going for a couple reasons. One, this is their highest volume to date anyway. I know they're probably going to make the Model Y, and that might be even more popular. But the Model 3 is the vehicle that is their high volume, big seller. Not necessarily the biggest money maker, but because they're going to be selling so much volume, they have to invest probably more in the manufacturing process because of how complicated and how automated it is, and they're doing that so that they can make a ton of them more cheaply later on. But because of that, they're putting in a ton of money into this, and this is no different than other car companies. The difference is other auto companies have billions and billions of cash from the profits of their other vehicles. Tesla doesn't have that. They're using investor cash as well as their own revenues and stuff from Model S and X. But they're burning through a lot of cash. You can only do that so long. So they've got to get the Model 3 revenue stream coming in, and they got to get those being churned out in high numbers, so that model, that business model, can start functioning the way it's supposed to, so that they can move on to these next projects. Both the semis and the Roadsters are not going to be very high volume vehicles. There's way fewer there's way fewer semis total driving around than there are passenger cars, and of course there's going to be way fewer $250,000 supercars being sold. But having said that, because of that, they may not need to invest so much in like crazy automated manufacturing lines, because if it takes them a little longer to make semis, maybe it doesn't matter because they don't need to make that many. So they don't have to put up quite as many billions to start making that thing. And specifically with the Semi, it's based on a lot of Model 3 components. It's got 4 Model 3 motors. So they've already got a lot of that stuff worked out. So you'll save in manufacturing costs that way. I guess what I'm saying is it actually may be less of a deal to manufacture a Tesla Semi and maybe even the Roadster as well than it is this huge Model 3 process, just because of the scale issue. Musk has said himself that it's easy to make a prototype, a crazy cool prototype. It's easy to make a car. It's really hard to make a factory to make lots of those cars. And the crazy example of that, Model X is pretty crazy too, but those volumes aren't going to be anything near what Model 3 is. I see the Tesla Semi and the Roadster as they're cool, they're revolutionary, and I think they're going to have a huge impact on the transportation industry and the supercar industry, which that may seem like nothing, but I'm glad that they're doing the Roadster because people that buy those kind of cars generally have quite a bit of extra money. That's why they did the first Roadster in the first place. So it's cool that they're doing it again because you can mark that up with such a premium. You can actually generate quite a bit of revenue. So I'm glad that they're able to tap into that. But none of those things are going to matter if they blow through all these billions, trying to get the Model 3 production process going, and if it doesn't get off the ground. So yeah, I guess, so what I'm saying is this event was significant. It addresses 2 new categories that electric vehicles are now going to blow things out of the water, and that's cool, but I think those are, a year or 2 from now issues. The big thing this year and next year is still, even with this announcement, Model 3. And you can actually see that reflected in the Tesla stock price right now. Earlier this year, I think the stock price had peaked at like 380 something or something like that. And now it's hovering in the low 300s. The investors in Wall Street are not quite sure what to make, like which way Model 3 is going to go, because we're still in that ascent out of production hell. And so, eventually things are, going to get solved, but what if there's crazy delays and it takes an extra 6 months again, and there's, Tesla's still going to be blowing through all kinds of capital costs, which really can't be subsidized enough by Model S and X. And so this is a critical time, I think. I think if Tesla gets the Model 3 up and running in high volume, even not necessarily by the end of this year, but early in Q1 of next year, if things like start looking like they're smoothing out and it's really gonna start popping, then they've made it. If not, I'm not saying they'll go bankrupt, but I think they'll just have I think their valuation might take a dip. I think people might get out of their stock, which will make it go down for a little while. I think they'll survive, but it may be an insult in addition to their Model 3 injury, which kind of makes things take even longer for them to heal. So this is a critical time. Having said that, their design and their engineering on these 2 new fronts is just super awesome. I wish I could have ridden in both. And by the way, the reason I couldn't, so you had to do a reservation to ride in either of these. Whoops. So the Tesla Semi, the people who were doing those reservations were, trucking industry executives or, national chains like Walmart people. So they were getting test rides in the smaller gray one, which I have footage of. Check that out. But they put reservations down most likely. And then in the Roadster, there were some YouTubers that were able to go. Derek, Dan from What's Inside, as well as Ben Solons. I don't know if Dan has a reservation. I'm not quite sure how he went on one. But anyway, the other guys, they qualified for free Roadster. So technically they have a reservation then. So they were able to go. Bjorn also, he was able to ride in it as well. But everybody else, Brooks from Drag Time had a test drive, but he put down a deposit. So very interesting. And he was talking to some other people and said that car is going to blow all his other cars out of the water. yeah, so that's it. That's what I think about the event. I don't know if I'll be able to go to another one of these. If you're thinking of buying a Model S or a Model X, please consider using my referral code. It's Brandon1055, or the link I keep in the comment section. That will help me possibly attend future events. Or, you know, get a Roadster myself. I only have 54 more referrals to go this year to qualify. I think that's everything I wanted to cover. So, but yeah, questions, comments, put it down at the bottom. There's also the like button down there if you enjoyed this video, or just feel generous. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.